Hey you, yeah you guy in the castle right there. You like castles, don't you? How did I know? You like castles, well that's why you're here. That's why you clicked on the video. You've come to the right place. Listen, we can't all live in a castle, but that's why we have Castlevania. Hell yeah, I've been on a Castlevania kick lately. Hence why I've been playing Castlevania 1 and, not so much 2 or 3, but Bloodlines, oh boy, get ready for nostalgia bias because goddamn do I love this game. If you love castles, Castlevania, goth culture, any of that, video games, well, you know what? You should do yourself a favor and subscribe because there's more where that came from. Listen, I do have the nostalgia bias, but I'll be as objective as possible. Just for the record, I did own this game when it was rare. I don't know if it still is, and then I sold it and made a decent bit of money. But I really enjoyed it on my de facto console, the SEGA Genesis, maybe a good 5 years ago or so. Although I sold my physical copy, I still very much enjoy this game today through the Castlevania Anniversary Collection. This game has an interesting context. It was made and published in 1994 for the SEGA Genesis and very much feels like it was tailor-made to the console. It's considered, according to the wiki page, a Gaiden in the Castlevania series, and a Gaiden is literally like a foreigner. It's a Gaiden in the sense that the original games took place in more of a medieval romantic era, and this one is more modern, not totally modern, but the setting is around World War I in Europe. In this setting, you play as either John Morris or his friend Eric Legarde, wielder of the Legarde spear. Legarde. I don't know why the name is so weird. If you spell it backwards, Eric Legarde, you get Dracula. No, that doesn't work. Anyways, the point is, John Morris comes from the Belmont line of vampire hunters. His father was Quincy Morris, and Quincy had an epic showdown with Dracula. And John and Eric, they witnessed it back in the day, and now Dracula's resurrected by an evil witch. And it's John and Eric's passion. It's their life calling to take down Dracula. And so they do. Castlevania Bloodlines takes you on a grand tour of 6 areas in Europe, through which you will fight the 6 demon lords of Dracula. And I won't spoil the bosses, in conversation here, but I will show some gameplay, so, watch at your own risk, but you can listen to me, that's fine. And they're pretty epic. The stages are pretty epic. The game is just a real wonder to behold. Visually, it's striking. On the audio front, it's striking. I remember my first time coming up to a couple of these stages, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and all of the platforms, you're hopping across them, and meanwhile the Leaning Tower is coming into view, and you have gargoyles floating around you. Not only is it just a really intense auto-scrolled segment, but it's also just really gorgeous. Another scene that stands out to me is like the beginning of stage 2, when you see the water effects rise, fall, and it's kind of this reflective purple. It's really something beautiful to behold. It is probably one of the most striking games that came out in the 16-bit era that I've played anyway. A couple songs on the soundtrack are good. They did go in my playlist. I'm thinking of like the ending credits theme, the final boss stage, the Versailles, France stage theme. This soundtrack is what spearheaded the composer into the Castlevania limelight. This was her first project. I don't have her name up, so I'm not going to try, but and guess, but I'll put it on the screen. And She did a really great job. It's not that so much I would listen to a lot of these on my own time. I just think they complement the eerie and gothic nature of the game really well. So hats off to you, Miss Composer. Castlevania Bloodlines is regarded as one of the most difficult in the series. Not necessarily from a gameplay perspective, but merely because it operates on a limited continue system. Which, while that may be unfortunate to some, is actually quite manageable if you know what you're doing. So I'm happy to give you a bit of a beginner's guide to Castlevania Bloodlines so you can tackle this game full front and not get intimidated by the difficulty. Before you start, the first thing you need to do is go to the menu and give yourself a couple extra lives. So it defaults to 3, but in the menu you can adjust it to 5 or a lesser amount if you're pretty wild. I'm not. I just like to give myself a lot of lives. And you have 3 credits technically. So with 5 lives you'd have 15 as opposed to the 3 times, which would be 9. It's 6 stages, so you can benefit from an extra 6 lives. You could change the difficulty to easy. What that would allow you to do is not take knockback in addition to your damage. So let's say you're on a stairwell, enemy won't knock you back off the stairwell, which, if you come across those Medusa heads, that can be helpful. But personally, I don't think you'll need that. There are 2 characters to choose from in the game, both of which play unique and have slightly different paths. They're John Morris and Eric Legarde. John Morris is more of a traditional whip bearer in the sense that he plays like Simon Belmont from the original Castlevania game. So people who like the classic Castlevania controls will probably go with John Morris. Additionally, he can jump and angle his whip attack up or horizontal and down. So he does have a bit of a multi-directional whip, but you can only use it in an aerial fashion, and that can be tricky. Eric is much easier to use, so if you're just learning the game for the first time, I'd personally recommend him. The spear has a longer range, so you can attack enemies from further away, and a couple enemies in this game will have a decent reach, so it does help to have that extra wiggle room. Additionally, Eric has a special ability that lets him use his spear to plunge higher in the air, and that can help for a couple harder to reach areas. It's all a matter of preference, but I will say too, Eric's aerial jump gives him some invincibility frames, so you can actually exploit that a little bit. If you're looking to cheese through the game, Eric's not a bad option. He's a big, cheeser. Like me, I took my time playing Castlevania Bloodlines, and I suggest you do too. There are no time limits. So you can actually take your time to really see what's happening in each stage. What are the enemy patterns? What are the stage patterns and stage hazards? This game is full of stage hazards. So you do have to memorize some of them to a certain extent to know where you're going. So be prepared to fail, because you will. You'll die at a couple points and be like, oh man, that was so cheap. But you'll know to look out for it next time. You'll still have a couple of those occasional ones, like where, let's say, you get drowned by water or an unfortunate knockback. But it's easy to pick back up. And I do think that if you really analyze what are the enemy behaviors, you can take a decent approach at tackling them. The game is a lot of pattern recognition. What will the enemy do at this point? How can I take advantage of that? How can I dodge it? Etc. What are their weak points? When all else fails, the game does have a decent checkpoint system. It's broken into sort of like manga squares, like stage 1-1, stage 1-2. And when you die, you respawn at that square. So you wouldn't respawn at the beginning of the stage. You wouldn't respawn at 1-1. You'd respawn at, say, 1-2. And that's really helpful for first-time players, and also just so you don't have to repeat large segments. I think that's an understated point about this game, is that, you get to practice at those points that you need the practice at. And I do think if you get into like a mid-boss or final boss, you should just go all out. You should really use all the tools at your disposal. An advanced technique is actually to do kind of the Castlevania 1 trick, and if you can go back in the scene, like down a set of stairs, you can farm for weapon upgrades or for sub-weapons or for extra jewels to add to your disposal. And if that fails, the game does have a password system. So despite having limited continues, after you clear a stage, you get a password. And you can just take a picture of it and input it the next time. Let's say you're at your last credit. I think by the time you're at your last credit, that's when you should probably look at the password system and maybe practice that stage. I know I needed to do that for the final Dracula boss as Eric, but by the time I played on my John Morris playthrough, I had it down. I think after you do all that, you can hope to really do a decent number on the game. I mean, I cleared this not in one credit, but with the allotted credits as John Morris in one playthrough in about an hour and 10 minutes. And I think that's really what I like about this game is it's kind of a quick, fun Castlevania that still challenges you, but I don't think it's over the top. I think it's manageable. And I think it's a real gem. It's a real experience. That being said, I do have more in this series to experience. I'm looking forward to Super Castlevania 4. I'm looking forward to the TurboGrafx one, was that Rondo of Blood, and definitely Symphony of the Night, as well as the advanced games. Let me know which Castlevania game you'd like to see me cover, and let me know what you think of Bloodlines. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon. Hopefully in a castle. My YouTube castle, that is, which I'll buy one day with all of my YouTube revenue, $100. I'll build it out of Legos. Bye.